pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call the Lamar City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, August 1st, 2023 to order. We'll start with a roll call, please, Jacob.
Okay, Goodchild?
Yes.
Donlin?
Here.
Witt?
Yes.
Sturgeon?
Here.
Bruns? Here.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. First item on the agenda is a hearing for the Parks and Rec Committee ordinance. So, at the July 18, 2023 meeting, council set this date and time for a public hearing regarding adding Chapter 25 Parks and Recreation Committee to the Lamar's Code of Ordinances. Attached is a draft that would establish a committee to advise and make recommendations to the council. The city administrator recommends the council establish specific areas the committee will oversee. The areas the city administrator recommends the committee will oversee are as follows: YMCA, Willow Creek Golf Campground, parks, pools, Little League Complex, Riverview Complex, and trails. So you have the rough draft here. And I believe we have some people here that I had contacted that had contacted me about serving on the potential Parks and Recreation Committee. If any of them want to address the council, feel free. You don't have to, but I appreciate you coming and offering your input. So,
is there anything anybody saw at the?
Just go ahead and approach the microphone, Jason can keep going.
Go ahead, Jason. Anything, any suggested changes? What's
I have
good?
I have a couple, but Patty's up here.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I insist, Patty.
if you can introduce yourself and tell us your address.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm Patty Sitzman. I'm Patty Sitzman, and we live in Lamars, Iowa. My question is, I went through you guys' newspaper article, you know, that you kind of put in, so I have a question on a couple things. So, you didn't want the Park Board Committee to come back, I'm reading kind of on here. So can you explain to me what the Public Works Committee is?
Well, it was just wait.
Oh.
That's a pretty strong statement. I didn't want them to come back.
Okay.
I didn't feel they needed to come back because the committees we already have in place are already covering those aspects that this would cover.
Okay, so I guess that was my question, that I wanted to know what the Public Works Committee was.
Parks.
Parks, yeah. Well, you have, in the paper, I think they had public, but Parks Committee.
Well, I don't have paper in front of me, so I
Okay.
don't know what you referred to. Is this something you wrote, Tom?
Little newspaper.
You recommended no committee, yeah.
It doesn't matter, that was one of my questions I was asking. So I'm assuming, is that consist of Brad? Is that his?
Public Works.
Yeah, is that his?
Would be, I don't have that in front of me either, Patty, but it's streets, it's street lights, it's parks, public facilities. I don't remember, there's one other thing.
It'd be Brad, and then 2 council members are assigned to that, and then city staff.
Okay. And then also, the other one you had was the Y and golf course was community service. So what does that consist of then?
Well, those 2 things, senior center, we tested my memory, Patty. Who sits on civil service?
No.
Hers.
Community service.
Community service.
It's YMCA and.
Swimming pools, tennis courts,
Yeah.
Well,
parks, anything parks.
well, parks is under public works. can get you a list, Patty.
Okay.
It's hanging on my wall.
Okay, well, that was just, because I guess my question was, if you do resurrect this, I think, and we do have a committee, you assign a committee, or you don't, or whatever, I think we all need to be on the same page, you know, so we should all work together on, you know, the parks, because I know that, Mr. Donlin said the big four was the campgrounds, the golf course, the Y, and then the Little League. But do you guys have to look at like the pond area, there's tons and tons of parks out there and all that kind of stuff. Is that more what you're not thinking we need to do, or we need to know everything?
Which I think, to be fair to all of this, just to be clear, I think when it originally came up, I think Tom is correct. Jason's recommendation was, it's not broke, let's not fix it. I think after the council discussion, which was not conveyed maybe in the article as well, it was decided, let's look at this.
Mhm.
So I don't think it was some hardcore, I don't want it. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, I think if we reform this, my idea would be that this group would oversee from Foster Park to the tennis courts to the golf course, as far as recommending what needs, what doesn't need. So I think it's more of an oversight or overseeing group, like you suggested.
Mhm.
That's what my envisionment is.
Yeah, and I appreciate Jason's recommendations here of a list of, committee or overseeing, which would be the YMCA, the Willow Creek Golf Course, the campground, parks, pools, Little League Complex, Riverview Complex, and trails. And I would probably add all other recreational facilities, which would include, you know, tennis courts and
Disc golf.
Disc golf.
The trail system, I think, is gonna become much larger in the near future, or the recent future. The trail system's gonna need an oversight group saying, hey, we got a section that needs to be fixed. Right now, we rely on Sturgeon to keep us up on that one, so,
Sure.
you know, I think it's all inclusive in that, Patty.
And there'll probably be some new things that come about as a result of the community plan, you know, so that's the hope anyway, is that we're gonna build some more, quality of life,
Sure.
things, so.
Sure. So that was my next question, that we went to the school and, you know, got to see the layouts of all that stuff and that. So will this board, if you do a park board or whatever, will that board be privy of that?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of what the plan is, but I would think the general public will be as well.
Sure,
So,
sure.
Yeah, the community plan.
I was gonna say, because this board would have absolutely zero say in what the school's doing, and I kind of misunderstood.
Yeah, it was at the school.
Gotcha.
It was at the
The
school,
meeting
yes.
was, gotcha, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, my thinking on it is just the Parks and Recreation, you know, and it seems like with the park board, and if that's Brad, he does a lot of stuff.
He does. He does a lot of stuff.
You wonder
He has a lot
how,
of
and if it's
responsibility.
just him, how does he ever keep up, you
Yeah.
know?
I'll tell you this, if something comes to me from one of my fellow cyclists, I call Brad first, then he gets somebody on.
Right.
So there's a chain of command, but Brad's kind of the point man.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our point, man.
But as long as you're there, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Sure.
How often would said committee need to meet? Monthly, 4 times a year, every other month?
You know, I guess that's why I think if you do a park board, I think you need those members involved. So if, say, something come up, then we could all get together at that time. I don't think unless it's kind of an emergency or you're really seeing something bad out there, that you're gonna have to meet that often.
The way the ordinance reads right now, guys, is that the committee shall meet at the call of the chairperson or at such regular time as adopted by the committee. So it's taken care of in the ordinance that it's up to the committee when they're gonna meet.
Right, right.
And you're right, it is a lot, and that's why I feel that, you know, we need the help of a parks committee, because it's a
Right.
lot for the 2 council members that are assigned to the park committee to, you know, keep an eye on things, is a lot for Brad.
Mhm.
And I think the more eyes, the better,
Mhm.
so.
I know right now we're helping Brad find a tennis person that does the surfacing. So we have been, we've been helping him do that, and we've checked with, like 3 or 4 different places too. And I think one of them, he has
Regarding
used.
tennis, you mean?
Yeah,
The tennis courts?
yeah, yeah. So, because that was our last meeting, I think we came
Yeah.
here for or whatever, so let me see if I have one more question. Oh, I think it was, that, I think Mike said that, if we do a park board or whatever, that we should attend all of the meetings that you guys have here. But I guess I would look at that as, just like you said, that you would appoint someone and then you would get together as a group or whatever. So I guess that would depend on what you're here to talk about in that. Maybe every one of us can't be there all the time, or whatever, just like you guys, so.
Well, I think that's the idea of a council person being on your committee.
Right.
I mean, that's why we put them there, is so you have, whether it's library, whether it's parks, whether it's fire, you have council people attending your committee meetings so that they can be a liaison to relay that, so that you don't have to, if you're on that board, you're not required. Now, if it's a big issue like tennis courts, we observed that a
Sure.
while back, a bunch of you show up to make your point clear. Okay, so I mean, that's how that would be.
Sure.
Similar to the CBB, I mean, the individual members of the CBB don't necessarily come to the meeting, even when we say our recommendations, but, Rob and myself, and maybe Jessica or somebody would, so.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
The council liaison to the committee can carry the message back to the council.
Sure, yeah. So, I don't think I have any other questions. I don't know, it's just, when I was on the board last time or whatever, I know there was always, things that didn't get done or whatever, but when we were in it, it was kind of a growing, because, we always had to work around Sky.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like we were always working on the golf course and then the Y and that, but we did get a lot of stuff done, I felt anyway.
Sure.
So, I don't know, I think it would be a good idea. If we wanna move forward and you guys did all that work on, bringing those groups in and setting up different things for Lamar's, we need it.
Yeah.
It seems like when you talk to some people, they're always leaving town to swim or, do different things like that, so.
Thank you, Patty.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Pat.
you bet.
I'd make a motion then to.
Well, we don't have it in the packet, but you will need to close the hearing.
Yeah.
Hold on a couple seconds, because Jason has a question hanging out there. Is there anything that I saw, on the, suggestion, I guess, that maybe I would consider changing? It's not a deal breaker by any means, but I don't know that there needs to be 2 council people. I think 1 council person, on that committee, because you're also gonna have probably the mayor there. Quite possibly Jason will attend a lot of those meetings, so you can leave it 2, but sometimes I think we get meetings on top of meetings. And then the only other thing, Rob, that I saw that maybe I'd flip is, maybe the number of people in the rotation of the years, so that instead of having 2 in their third year, have 2 in the first year, 2 in the second year, 1 in the third year, so that when it starts to rotate through the cycle of 4 years, you have more experience longer. You follow what I'm saying? And there's a track record, because it's very beneficial in committee or up here at the council to have someone who's been in on a few years of history on, no matter what the subject is, because you don't learn this stuff overnight. So I'd maybe consider changing that. You follow me, Mike?
I do, but I'd rather have a committee that's being started fresh, get a good solid commitment from as many of them as we can. So that's why you have 1 on a 1-year term, so that we have the other people committing to a couple years right up front.
I read this backwards. I read it backwards. That's what I'm saying. Okay, my bad.
Jim?
Get rid of it.
Anybody else have any input on, the Parks and Rec Committee?
I think it creates a chance for us to get citizens and community input a little more smoothly and a little more effectively than we had now. So I think we should proceed with the hearings we need to do, and if there are more tweaking, that's fine.
And more broadly, because as was evidenced by the tennis courts, if none of us use the tennis courts, we won't know about that. I use the trails, maybe you guys don't, so.
You're a biker?
Not this week. So,
All right.
if that was the
Any
time.
other input on
We
that?
do need to close the hearing.
Yeah. Seeing none, I will officially close the hearing for the Parks and Rec Committee ordinance and turn to the council for a direction on this.
Motion to approve the first reading of ordinance number 981 to amend the Lamar's Code of Ordinances by adding chapter 25, Parks and Recreation.
Second. We have a motion and a second. I believe it's roll call.
Donlin?
Yes.
Bruns?
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Wick?
Yes.
Sturgeon?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for attending, appreciate it. Next up is general discussion. So we have a time for citizens to come up to the podium and address the council or anything that they wish. Any citizens here for general discussion? Go ahead and approach the podium and state your name and where you live. We will allow a 5-minute time period.
Sounds good. I am Jason Scott, and I live 746 8th Street, southeast in Lamar's. I'm calling, I guess I'm here today to speak up. My stepson was involved. The police department and the fire were called out by the Floyd River for a fire. Him and his friends were at had a little bonfire, safe bonfire. They had equipment there to put it out. When fire department showed up, they told them that they'd have to wait for the police department to see if they would be charged with arson. And what I can look up, that does not qualify as arson, as having an open fire. Question whether it's on city property. I mean, it's right by the river, and depending on where high tide is, that's from what I read, states where the state owns and where the city owns. My concern is that this letter contains the names of all the minors that were involved. It also seems to be an extortion type letter saying that these individuals will be fined $100 and you can make that payment to a P.O. box. Otherwise, as the letter states, the fire department will press charges, or they can be, as they said, filled. It quotes City of Lamar is adopting billing fees under Ordinance 36. Everybody I've kind of talked to, I kind of like to know what the ordinance on open fires is. Like, is everybody fined $100 that doesn't have a fire pit contained? Is that something that we're gonna be going around town fining for? I mean, because if that's the case, then we should be doing it for everybody. And since this got me here today, there are a few other complaints that I have. Basically I used to work at the hospital here in town, and so I know quite a few of the people there. I work at a hospital in Sioux City now, and I have for 20-some years. The transport part of it, they're telling me that the ambulance is refusing to transport more and more people. They now have a distance limit of, I believe, 155 miles. And in today's medical climate, it's getting very difficult to get a hospital to accept some of these patients because of the how full they are. So when you can find a hospital to take them, and then you have your transport service refuses to take them, it's very difficult on these nurses. And the patient that needs to go to a higher level of care. I know that they've had to use Cherokee's service a number of times, so they will call them. And then my last thing I'm concerned about is they were told not to call dispatch for transfers anymore, that they're supposed to call the firehouse directly. And I don't understand why that is. I mean, unless it's strictly to get their response times lower than what they are, so you're artificially deflating them. But this letter that we received is a very poorly written letter. It's definitely not of any legal, nobody of any legal wrote this. It just seems like, you know what, we're gonna get $300 out of these kids, and it's gonna be a mandatory donation. And I don't know, I just want all this stuff on record, because I don't know how much of this you guys are aware of. But that's all I really have for today.
Do you think the kids did anything wrong?
I think they made maybe a poor choice because they are 16 years old. And they're Boy Scouts. They had equipment there to put the fire out. They put the fire out themselves. They did not use an accelerant to start it.
If I went to your house and started a fire in your backyard, are you okay with that?
Well, that would be private property.
Right.
But,
City property is where they started a fire.
okay, and
Okay.
it's questionable whether it's city property there.
Do you want Dave or Kevin to respond, council, or just, or not?
No, I'd rather not, so.
Because I think it's ridiculous what he's doing, but you wanna talk, Dave?
I'll defer to the city attorney at this point. I mean, I can answer any questions anybody wants. We have a ordinance for billing, and the fire department was paged out. An uncontrolled fire on city property. There was other things that could have been addressed down there, but